Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome back. We got another episode, Guardians Daily, for you. Happy you're tuning in, and you're tuning in for good reason after a fun night at Progressive Field last night, actually. Um, Great comeback win. Great comeback for your Cleveland Guardians, and they needed that. They needed that desperately, especially coming off get blown out in game one of a series, especially against a team you don't really like, especially your fan base doesn't like in the Houston Astros. And you needed that. You felt good. You had Parker Messick on the mound last night, got off to an early 2-run lead, in part thanks to Angel Martinez hitting yet another home run. This again, left-handed homer for Martinez, seeing him really find himself from both sides of the plate. Known traditionally more for his right-handed out of his switch hitting options, obviously, especially last year. He's really starting to find it from both sides, giving him more balance and really being a perfect guy in this lineup. Want to talk more about him in a little. And then you had Parker Messick on the mound last night, and he was lights out through about the first 4 innings. Looked really good, especially coming off the longest start of his career, obviously 112 plus pitches last week in an attempt to try and get that no hitter. And now he in the fifth inning, and he kind of got roughed up, and not in the most traditional way. They had an error. They had a bouncing ball, that a play that almost got made at first, overturned by review. And then Jose, who doesn't make a lot of errors, just had a kind of a weird hop on him at third. That resulted in a run. And then Yordan Alvarez, one of the best bats in the game, didn't even hit the best out of it. Hit a opposite field ball to left, but the way they had him playing, especially with the shift in the outfield, just did enough, and it was very similar to a hit we're going to talk about in just a moment. But that Alvarez kind of a backbreaker. Astros took the lead. They ended up going up 4-2 eventually when it was all said and done. And it just kind of felt like, man, we're blowing another one. We had him in a good spot, especially the way Messick looked on the mound. And then your guy, the guy I talked about yesterday, he just started I had just started to buy into this slump of his. Yesterday on the broadcast, even he had some bad at bats. I want to take you to an bat in the middle of the game, not before we talk about the good one. 3-0. He's working it. He's got a 3-0 count. Chase DeLauder does. And runners on first and second. And especially as he's been struggling a little bit, they decided to give him the green light. 3-0. I don't have a big problem with it, but with the young hitter like that, sometimes you do feel the need. Man, I have the opportunity. This is in the zone. I have to take it since I do have the opportunity. Like I have that freedom to swing. And then what is the result? It's an infield pop. And then the Guardians end up scoring no runs in that inning, and it's just deflating again. And it's just things like that where you're starting to get a little concerned about a young hitter at the plate, confidence wise. And you could see it. He knew right away how frustrated he was. He put his hands on his head. Like, what did I do? Because especially it's just a bad baseball play. 3-0 count, 2 runners on, no outs. And then you'll pop one up on the infield, just devastating to what you're trying to accomplish in an inning. But he got his chance again. In the bottom of the eighth inning, did a really good job. Schneemann got a nice hit. Brian Rocchio, who's been so darn good lately in that number 9 spot, has just been on fire. Drove in another run, staying on the ball. And then DeLauder ends up with the bases loaded and a lefty on him. Lefty on lefty action, the tough, supposed to be hard. And he worked a really nice at bat, got ahead in the count, worked down. It's 2-2, and you can tell the whole at bat. He fouled off multiple pitches, and he was trying to go the opposite way, which is what we love to see from especially these young hitters, using all of the ball, like use the whole baseball field. You know what I mean? Some of these guys get so restricted to these, get pull happy. They want to hit these home runs. They want to rip it. Great. But sometimes that's not what the pitch is going to be there for. Excuse me. Chase the Lauder, though, he knew what he was doing. Opposite field, 3-run triple to the left field line. Didn't hit it the hardest in the world. All he really was trying to do was get a sac fly and tie this game. You know what I mean? But he did that and much more with that one, driving it to left. and then you could see the reaction. Slides into third. I mean, that's a play that really can turn the tides and the momentum of this. I mean, I don't want to say a season because it's so early, but turn around what we can do to finish out this month of April. You know what I mean? Change the tides. We have a Wednesday game for the series now against the Astros, and just keep stacking, especially after a nice weekend against Baltimore. Didn't want to squander that and then go get down 2 gate, lose the first two to Houston. That would have been kind of a bummer, but they didn't. And then credit to the bullpen. The bullpen did a great job last night. Like everyone who came in really just did their part. Paulette was good. Connor Brogdon, who I've been really hard on because he hasn't been that good, but he was good last night, so we'll take that. And then Cade in the ninth. Didn't know he was going to get that opportunity. He gave up a run, but who cares? He had room to play with because of the DeLauder. And then Kyle Manzardo, right after DeLauder, ripped another kind of a dagger base hit to extend it up to a 4-run lead, give them some breathing room after the DeLauder triple. So, yeah, they walked Jose. That's how that lineup worked out there, if you were curious. But great signs from the top of this lineup, which has been kind of struggling. It's been the bottom of the lineup doing the work. It's been the Schneeman. It's been the Rocchio. It's been the Martinez. Well, now we're seeing it from the top of the lineup. Jose's been on fire now. AL Player of the Week last week. Obviously, he deserves it. One of the best in the sport, and he's starting to catch his fire. Teams are really not even really trying to pitch to him. That's going to give more opportunities for guys like DeLauder, Manzardo, where you're going to be excited to pitch to these guys because you kind of have to if Jose's going the way Jose's going. Man, so on the mound yesterday was Parker Messick, obviously one of the top stories for this team so far this year. And he actually looked really sharp. I know it's his final line didn't end up as glorious as some of his other ones this season have been, but I thought it was interesting. He was talking in his post game presser, and he kind of said he felt more comfortable and he thought he had his best stuff of the season tonight, even though he was coming off of 110 plus pitch performance in his last game against Baltimore. Obviously, like we said, was going for that no hitter. I think they would have let him throw 130 pitches if he needed to, if he didn't give up any hits, which is kind of how you should do it in general. I get really bothered by some of these guys when they have a chance at history, these no perfect games or no hitters, and pitchers and coaches and the teams decide we're worried about pitch count. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity when you're in a game like that and you get towards the seventh, eighth inning. So I like that Stephen Vogt, when we've had these chances, same thing we saw it with Gavin last year, give him your chance, give him your best bet. Obviously, you don't want the guy to have to throw that many pitches sometimes, but like if he's going for it, let's go for it. You know, it's a different type of thing, and it's a moment in history. I think that's worth it, and I get so frustrated sometimes when you see these team no hitters because multiple pitchers combined for it. Well, that kind of sucks because that means you had someone on the mound that you decided we aren't going to let give them this chance to go the full distance and try and give themselves the opportunity to get it. Well, that you can see where the concern could come in for this week after all those pitches last week for Messick. Wasn't sure if they were going to push how far they were going to let him go tonight. And it actually kind of did end up being a bit of a factor, at least to the naked eye, in terms of in the fifth inning later in the game. That's when he got teed off on a little bit. It was, again, he didn't, it's not like he was getting ripped. They weren't taking advantage, like doing anything aggressive with him, but they found ways to get on base and they got the runs they needed off Messick. But I thought it was interesting in the post game when he was saying that was the best stuff he had all year in terms of like spin rate, velocity, and he still felt as good as ever, which I think is just a good sign for Messick in terms of a young guy. They're gonna rely on him a lot. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, right up there for rookie of the year with the Lauder, with some of these other guys. It's a loaded rookie class, especially in the AL this year. A lot of guys, especially early in the season, getting their opportunity and taking advantage. So that's always fun. You know, with Messick, it's fun to just watch him go out there. You feel comfortable with him on the mound every 5 days. And he just has a little bit of that confidence out there where he knows he's got good enough stuff. And you've seen it because he really hasn't had many bad games in his career. I mean, he really hasn't had one yet. If that was that was considered a down game statistically for Parker Messick, and he still looked pretty darn good, especially in those early innings. So a lot to like with Messick. Keep on being excited about this guy, guys. Like this is a guy when he's on the mound, it's appointment television right now. At least for me, I think he's just a fun watch. You know what I mean? And he kind of reminds me of a guy who, especially early in his career, was also a fun watch, and he hasn't been as much of late. That's Tanner Bybee. But his last start against the Orioles, best of the season. No runs, 6 innings, quality start out of Tanner. How does he respond? Does he keep on the right path? And is this part of the time where Tanner turns to turn it around? Especially got a lot of criticism. He's got that contract so he's gonna be here for a little bit. And what does that go through almost 2029? I don't think we'll see him through the rest of it. But hey, he turns things around and he starts pitching like he used to. Maybe he finds his way through it. So we got him on the mound for game 3 of this series. This is the decider, and then we got an off day tomorrow. Nice timed off day because Thursday night in Cleveland gonna be a big one. We got Cavs Raptors, we got NFL draft. Cleveland Browns have 2 first-round picks, so gonna be a lot of stuff going on Thursday. So that's not a bad day to take a day off from the Guardians, but let's stay focused on Wednesday with Tanner Bybee on the mound, and we got that rubber match with the Houston Astros. And this is the Astros have just been depleted with injuries. I think they have 16 players currently on the injured list, and you've seen it. So they're just struggling to get arms. They had to call up a guy to pitch for tomorrow. And there's just going to be an interesting balance of how does this Guardians lineup respond after last night? Obviously, a lot of good stuff late in the game in Cleveland. So it'll be interesting to see who steps up and makes the big plays to go and win a series tonight at the ballpark. With Bybee, is this the time in his career? I think this is a very important start. I think last week I said was the most important start of his career that you can have for April, whatever it was. Well, it's April 22nd. We got Tanner Bybee on the mound. I think this is a big one for him. This Astros lineup's very solid. Altuve, Correa. It's kind of funny that those guys are back together at the top of that order. And then Yordan Alvarez has been on fire this season. I'm curious if they'd ever look into moving him. Especially he's got 2. I looked at it last night out of curiosity. Got 2 years left on his contract. He's awesome. I don't think the Astros are that level. Like they're a good baseball team. They're going to be in the mix this year and probably the next couple years. But I don't think they have the depth or the young pieces. They're an old team in terms of their big names, and I don't think there is that young stud in that lineup that like you're hearing about at least throughout the first 2 games of the series. No one's caught my eye all that much. So I wonder if they would ever look. I mean, they could get a haul for him. You know what I mean? Like Alvarez is one of the best. He's might be the best left-handed bat in the game right now. Like power. I mean, best power hitter in the game right now. Got 10 homers on the season already. He's a threat. He's still relative. I mean, the injuries have always been the nagging thing with Yordan, but I gotta think 2 years left on his contract. I don't think they're gonna pay him again. This has got to be near the time where you want to move a guy like Alvarez. Not want to as much as someone, especially as we get towards trade deadline season. If you kind of just dangle him out there as a piece, I can assume you're going to get some of the best prospects in baseball back for him. You just got to figure out who has them. You can send him back to the Dodgers. That's where he started his career, in the minors. And he was in one of those trades that ended up shaking up the sport. And obviously, the Astros ended up winning in some World Series. So interesting, just kind of food for thought when I was watching him at the plate last night. Kind of curious where things stand with him and Alvarez's future because he is that darn good. So that'll be interesting just throughout the season. Keep an eye if there's any action there. Maybe we will be the first ones on it, or maybe everyone's talking about it and I'm actually behind. Who knows? But we got a fun one tonight at Progressive Field. Guards, Astros, winner takes the series. Tanner Bybee on the mound. I'll be watching. I hope you will be too. And as always, go Guardians.